Hello. Hello? Can you hear that? Oh, I got nods from the back. That's exactly what I want. Welcome to the 2 o'clock session of the M&H show in Theatre 1. My name is Colin Mulberg, and I've been hosting one of the theatres at the M&H show since 2015. And this is the very, very first time that they've actually said that I should do a session. So I'm kind of introducing myself, and it's especially enlightening, and I'm very glad that we're doing it in person after the pandemic. It's still feeling a little bit weird, certainly for me. I don't know if that's the same for many of you. So every now and again, if at random you could just suddenly freeze, then actually, you know, we'll all feel a little bit more relaxed. My name's Colin Mulberg. I'm director of Colin Mulberg Consulting, and I run a consultancy which helps venues to look outwards at their visitors and spend possibly a bit less time looking just inwards at their collections and their buildings and generally their stuff. We are going to record this session with the idea that at some point, way after the show, we can put it online. So if the mic drops out or we get a lot of breakthrough noise from next door because they've been rowdy, you will be able to catch up online with that as well. And we have time for Q&A at the end, and we'll have a microphone coming round. Okay. I suppose for Colin Mulberg Consulting, we have quite a simple approach to change, really, and it kind of looks like this. A lot of places start on the right-hand side with their stuff, with their collections, with their activities and sites, etc. Venues I work with find it's more helpful if we start on the left, with your visitors, with your audiences, and develop understanding and insight into your audiences. So you understand their motivations, their interests, their agendas, or to borrow the 5 golden words of selling, what's in it for them? What is it that they're after? Only then can you go back to the right-hand side and see what have you got that matches what your audiences want, that you can build into a strong offer down the bottom. Now, if you build a strong match, which is a strong offer, so you're giving your audiences 80%, 90% of what they want, you can do something with that. You can market with that. If you don't have a match, so what you have isn't matching what your audiences are after, or it's very weak, then I'm afraid you're chasing shadows, because you haven't got what they want, and their agenda will lead them to go somewhere else. Now, a tried and tested method of renewing the offer or giving a new offer is to do a project. And we're all familiar, in fact, the National Lottery were here talking about the money they're going to give out for project-based work, but some of that can be small. But we know about big projects. You put the resources into big change, and that has many advantages because it's focused, because it's easier to promote and explain and contain. You have 1 or 2 or set offers that you are giving to your audiences. Okay. The change often ripples out throughout an organisation. It's very rare if you open a new wing or a new gallery that it's just that has to change. There are other changes as well. Now, the thing with a big project is, as we all know, it takes time, effort, resources, management. It will take capacity, and it will take capability. And did I mention time? Because it does take time, surprising amount of time to do well. At the moment, there are also issues with capital projects. Inflation is one. Supply issues are another one, actually getting things for the project. Staffing issues are another one, including for builders. If you've got a capital project, there's building shortages as well. And obviously the COVID pandemic which we are probably in the middle of and we're not at the end of yet. So there are issues with doing the big project-based approach, but it is tried and tested. For many venues, I use an engagement-based approach. So we can look at all the areas where visitors are engaged. Before their visit, during their visit, and after their visit. We can look at opportunities for improving engagement, and we can look right across your whole organisation for opportunities to improve the offer. And that's kind of what I'm going to touch on today and have a look at almost a shopping list of how you can look through your own organisation and think about where can you improve the engagement and where can you improve the offer. And obviously this won't have resonance, everything I say won't have resonance with every single venue and all of you, and obviously you don't have to do everything at once. Another model which many venues find helpful is to think of a mixed economy. Because sometimes I get asked, should we charge everyone or charge no one? Well, it doesn't have to be like that. You can think of it as you can look at charging for some things and not for others. You can charge some audiences, but not for others. You can give selected free tickets. You can give discounts. You can choose a dynamic pricing model of how you want to bring in income and who you don't want to charge. Okay, and that can change. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Let's have a look at some of the possibilities and options. A big way forward is to audit your assets and your offers. Think about everything you have and everything you do, and consider everything to be an asset that can be used for engaging different audiences. Everything could be in play. One of those is, for example, the outside. So the pandemic has highlighted that the value of outdoor spaces, but also people's appreciation of outdoor spaces, the flexibility and the possibilities of outdoor spaces. And especially there's been a focus on well-being. So can you think about all of your outdoor spaces and your outdoors all around your venue? Now, it could be a courtyard that you just think of as somewhere that visitors have to walk through to go from one place to another. Actually, it could have a use. It is an asset. Places are looking at their terraces. They're looking at, for example, on the left, areas of planting. Because of well-being and people's increased appreciation of nature, people are more and more interested in planting and gardening and what grows. Royal Horticultural Society estimate, I don't know how they managed to work this out, but they estimate that in the UK there are 30 million gardeners. 30 million gardeners, that's a lot. That is a lot. So how can we use all of these things? On the bottom left is Lyme Regis Museum. And when we were doing this audit, one of the things we found was and a new extension they have a wonderful black wall on the outside with a courtyard. So immediately we're trying to think, how can that be used? Can they project onto it, for example? It is an asset that can be used. And we can talk about that later. Outdoor cafes are another option to be exploited. Anywhere that you can put awnings or canopies or gazebos, etc., and use them in different ways. All of these spaces add value. Now, another thing with looking at assets is also that many of them are fixed cost. So if you have areas inside your museum or outside your museum and they're empty, you still pay for those annually. Yeah? If you've got a courtyard, you still have to clean it and maintain it, whether anyone uses it or not. You'll do that planting in that part of a garden, and actually you may find that if it's only used for a few days a year, you're still paying for that. So how can we use all these things as much as possible? How can you do an audit of your assets? Am I getting echo here? Is it this? Okay. Inside as well. It's about thinking about every single space you have. Right in the middle, there's the atriums, reception areas, gathering areas. Every single room that you have that is accessible to the public. Your galleries as well. Obviously, you need to allow flow space, but we are also used to using those in different ways. On the left, top left, one museum was starting to look at its ceilings. We've got these great curved ceilings. Well, maybe we could project on those. Maybe we could hang things from them. They are an asset that you can use. On the right is the Charterhouse in London. They thought of that absolutely gorgeous part of an old cloister just as a corridor that got you from one bit to another bit. And they started exploring having teas in there, and using it for book groups in certain ways, and they have progressed to making it a hire offer. So if you want a small private party or gathering, or you want something small for a wedding, they can use that space as well as a bigger space. Even the experience of going up a spiral staircase for some audiences could be used in some way. One venue I was working with had, it was an old warehouse, and it actually had a very steep slope that was used to take the horses in for deliveries. And they just thought it was useless, so they actually blocked it off because it was a bit tricky getting up and down. That could be used for something exciting in a way. It is an asset. Another way is to also think about your whole building, your whole built heritage. Do you have anything that you could actually label? Building on the left is a typical one where we actually think of the displays inside, the collections in the cases inside. And we kind of lose track of the fact that this is a gorgeous Victorian building, which is worth almost turning into a gallery in its own right. So can you use your building in some way? Do you have things on your grounds? Do you have any heritage at all that you can label? It doesn't have to be the big stuff. It could be small stuff. It could be a little bit of decorative detail that's been left over. Yeah? We talk about placemaking. Well, this is part of placemaking. So can you think about your built heritage, your buildings in a new way? It could also be new build. It doesn't have to be just historic. Anything you've got where you can talk about it, which may be of interest as you walk around, it adds value, it's an asset. And it's also another reason possibly to come, or possibly to do an event there, or possibly to hire. Can you think about activities that you do? Can you audit those? Are there any activities that you do where you've done all the hard work for one audience and maybe you could widen it out to other audiences? Classic one is the link often between things you've worked out for nursery or primary school groups, which could also be adapted for families or vice versa, which could also be adapted for holiday clubs. You've already done the hard work. Can you use these things in more ways? Can you look at the talks and tours that you do and use them across wider groups? One venue I worked with had two totally separate fiefdoms of people that were doing talks and tours and working that out and programming that. and then people who were doing book groups, and they didn't talk to each other. Because actually, a lot of what you've done for one can be adapted for the other. You've done the work already, you've got this thing running. Can you adapt things for friends and members? Is another possibility. So if you've got something which is already for one group, you can actually transfer it to another group. The other one is to look at, on the right, activities you're doing anyway, such as back of house or conservation. Is there anything in there that you could turn into a very, very select event? Yeah? Classic, when I was at the V&A, was that every now and again, it would be like once a decade, they unrolled a certain tapestry and invited a few experts from around the world to come and have a look. Well, actually, you could invite or sell 3 extra spaces. First time in a decade. You're going to have to wait another 10 years before we even think about unrolling this. Do you want to be there? Yeah? And you can stream that online as well. Is there anything you're doing preparing for an exhibition? Getting a loan? Getting a new acquisition? Where actually you could turn that into a bit of an event. I just did some work a couple of weeks ago for some of the museums and heritage in Dublin, and they have the Lord Mayor's coach. Absolutely gorgeous 17th, 18th century coach with lots of gilding on it. And it is stored at a pumping station near the docks, where even the taxi didn't know how to get there. Every now and again, when it comes out for use in processions, they have to hitch it up to the horses and prepare it. And they've actually realised that people are really interested in that. It's an asset. It's something you already have to do anyway. So we're exploring how we can use that, and actually, do we house the coach somewhere else? You also have a lot of expertise. Way more than many organisations, and actually in museums and heritage we are not good at making the most of that expertise. So it could be collections based or curatorial knowledge. We are sometimes leading experts in a certain field, but we kind of take that for granted and we kind of don't make the most of it, whereas we could exploit that more. On the left is MUDAM, the Museum of Modern Art in Luxembourg. They do international art exhibitions, and they had curator talks, which they just gave away. Yeah? You've got the person that knows about this exhibition. Okay, you can, if you want to generate income, make more of that, and they charge for it, etc. But they also then use a mixed economy model, and they give some access to that away as well. We have a lot of subject knowledge that we can use. We also have knowledge about curating, displaying, collecting. We could use that. There are loads of small societies and private collectors. Surely we would be able to help them in some way. Again, it's up to you. If it's a community group, you don't have to charge for it. But if it's a private collection, maybe you want to. You have all this knowledge in-house. If you've got outdoors, you often have knowledge about gardening. Did I mention gardening? Yeah, I mentioned it lots. Okay, gardening, okay. There are lots of people who would love to know seasonally what they should do. What can they do domestically that you do so brilliantly in an organisational setting? Can you help people with an understanding of gardening for birds or butterflies or whatever? Again, back to well-being and the way the pandemic has accelerated change. I've been working with some military museums to look at their expertise, and surprise, surprise, it hadn't occurred to them that they are experts in team building and leadership. So now they're actually offering sessions as part of a corporate hire day. You can book an extra session which will be about leadership. Yeah? Other places I've worked with have different range of expertise. Again, it's an asset. We could have a look at it. You can use expertise also to tap in with specialists and enthusiasts. You often can give them access and expertise they cannot get anywhere else, and they really do appreciate it. Yeah, if you think of them, as one place called them a derogatory name of the rivet counters, okay, maybe you won't think like that, but they are thirsty for the expertise that you have. Okay. Rural Life Living Museum in Surrey on the left, they tap into that in two ways actually. They encourage certain enthusiasts and specialists to congregate. So this is an MG meeting that they hold, where all the MG owners get together and bring their MGs. I don't know much about that, I'm not a car person. That used to be free. They charge people now to bring your car to join in, but then they also throw it open to different audiences, and they encourage and get people to book slots so that the non-specialists can come along and actually they can engage as well. So you get to sit in the thing and you get to have a little play. Okay. So you know, all of these groups can be brought together. On the right is Windermere Jetty on Lake Windermere, and they have an old steam lake cruiser which enthusiasts restored, and the enthusiasts love running trips on the lake, and sure enough they can now sell that as a general offer, or you can actually buy a special session where it's just you or one other person, and you have the whole thing for a half day and a special lunch thrown in, and you can actually get to steer it. I was going to say drive, which shows you how much I know about boats. I think you steer it, and they take you through what it's like, how to keep the boiler going, etc., and it is yours for £250. So please don't all rush at once. You can even use assets that are outside your venue that you don't own. This is Lyme Regis Museum. They would say that they are the birth of fossil collecting, where they have Anne Benning, who started off collecting fossils as an amateur, and they have some very early fossil collection, but they've taken that outside the walls of the museum because they're on the Jurassic coast. So they do fossil walks where you actually take visitors down to the beach to see if we can find fossils and understand the geology of that area and where the fossils come from. And they're now expanding that to then say, okay, we can do you a polishing session where we show you how to polish your fossil. And if you don't find one on the walk, we can sell you one so you can polish it. None of that's theirs necessarily, but they have that expertise. The other one where the expertise might be because you know your local history is obviously in town walks. And lots of museums are doing that. That's an asset. You have that expertise. How can you use that? Food and beverage. That's expected nowadays as part of the day. Yeah? If you're not providing it, your visitors will want to know when they're going to get it and how they get it, because they need to know. Yeah, I'm not going to go somewhere and not only at 2:23 realise that lunch isn't there. I will need to know that beforehand. Do you have any nice settings? Do you have anywhere gorgeous where people are having lunch? That's an asset. The lunch is an asset, but the actual setting's an asset. Can you think about quality levels? Yes, on the one hand, you don't want to alienate audiences that don't have a lot of money, and we are starting to have a cost of living crisis that we all know which could be global and could be with us for a while. So we don't want to price people out of being able to enjoy our place and have an accessible tea or coffee or lunch or whatever, or ice creams. But on the other hand, do you have a gorgeous setting? Can you give me somewhere something special? Can you give me that high-level coffee? Sorry, I'm a Londoner, I expect high-level coffee. Okay. Do you do anything with local or regional producers or makers? You might have some of that in your shop, but you don't flag it up. It's an asset. Can you do partnerships with people? If you don't have food and beverage, can you do a partnership with a nearby cafe where you send them customers, the customers get something, and maybe you get something every 10 customers, or you have some kind of relationship? Yeah? I wanted to sneak the one on the right in. It's not a museum, as you might have gathered. This is for a friend of mine, Jeff, who runs the 100 Club in London, which is a very historic music venue. They focus on dealing with small suppliers and small businesses. Yeah? They don't have to, but they choose to. There is a story there that people are interested in. Yeah? And loads of bands remember being given their first or early gig at the 100 Club. So they have this story, this narrative they're building up as, you know, we work with the small guys as well. So you can get a cheap beer in London, well, cheap for London, but you can also get a more expensive craft beer there because they work with the small producers. Do you have an asset there? Is there a story there that you could turn into an asset? Obviously, there are experts for retail and for food and beverage. But again, are you doing anything with local suppliers? Anything I can't easily get elsewhere? The chalkboard on the right has the venue in the middle, and then the spider lines coming off tell you how many miles it is to the things that they're stocking. So if something's coming from 1 mile away, then that's on there, and you can tell when it's in the shop. They're making a big feature of that. Can you, for your visitors, solve some of their problems for buying gifts, especially at Christmas? Do you have anything you can't easily get somewhere else? There is an opportunity asset there. Yeah? I also like this shot because on the left chalkboard, it's got a great example of integrated selling. You're in the shop, but it's telling you about events and activities that are coming up. So you can engage people that way. You're increasing the chances that they won't leave you without knowing what's coming up. Yeah? Can you think about how you've got all these different offers, but how could they link up? And we could talk about that later on. There is evidence that people want to support local makers. The pandemic has focused on our local area, and they want to support local institutions. And they are interested in the story of values. Do you have any that you could talk to them about? Venue hire. Doesn't have to be large, it can be small scale as well. Obviously, people are used to the idea of weddings and big private events, but it could be small private events. It could be using whatever spaces work for you. Back to that courtyard again. Back to those gardens and the gardening I keep banging on about. I like the one in the middle at the bottom. That's a fire pit outdoors, contained. It is safe, I've been assured. But I particularly like the fact that they give out umbrellas. So if it rains, doesn't matter, you've got this, you know, we give everyone umbrellas, so if it rains, just put the umbrella up. You can still enjoy yourself. Can you use top right, any small area as a backdrop for filming or photography? There are whole sites where certainly even for fashion photography or product photography, people are desperate for a new backdrop. Do you have a bit of wall, a bit of garden, a bit of something that you can use indoors or out? Corporate hire. The bottom right is a cleared barn. There's no getting away from it, it's a cleared barn. But it is a different venue. And they're making an essay out of the fact that they're out of town, so you don't have to drive through town, you can avoid town, and they've got a car park. So you can get there, and then they link that with the catering, etc., etc. So everyone's trying to use these assets in different ways. I've been dealing with some venues who have been linking up with local churches and crematoriums and actually doing memorial services and wakes, because the crematorium local to them doesn't have the facility. Again, they have the assets. Can we rename things and think of things in different ways? That's an internal change. On the left is something which I think even now is still called the Learning Centre. And many museums and heritage sites have that. So, strangely enough, they're the audiences that people think of for using it. But actually, they're realising, with a small bit of investment, it might have a wider use. It could be a corporate hire. It has its own entrance and toilets, so you can use it without everything else being open. So they're investigating the possibility of having roller blinds that come down, which change the backdrop, which give it a different feel. Most places are moving away from making stuff too kiddie, because you can use it for other things. So can you rename and think of things in a different way? On the right, that's actually on effectively the second floor above an atrium, and it's outdoor seating for the cafe. But actually, it's an absolutely gorgeous view of the old town in Poole. Unique, you can't get that view anywhere else. So can we think of that as added value? Could that be the viewing platform as well as the cafe? And an idea that I am happy to pass on that will be stolen from the Camera Obscura in Edinburgh, where they have a tower, and up the top of the tower they have put second-hand marine telescopes and binoculars. And you can go up there because it's right next to Edinburgh Castle, and you can look along the Royal Mile, and you cannot get that scene anywhere else. So that's a rather cool thing to do, and they make a big feature of that. Another approach is to not even think necessarily about your different audience segments, but to think seasonally. So if you have a peak season in the summer, and you've got audiences for that, and maybe you're extremely busy, and with visitors, tourists, what happens in the shoulder season, the month before the peak season and after the peak season, which often is June and September? What about the off-season? How can you look for seasonal opportunities that will engage with your audiences? Often there's stuff happening in the town, like on the left, there's Christmas markets, decorations, Christmas events. Can you become part of that? Can you use that as an asset to link in and link to your audiences? And it just so happened that the Christmas light switch on was right near to Lyme Regis Museum, which had the Black Wall and the courtyard. Why can't they become part of that somehow? Are there other local events going on, like on the right for a sculpture festival? or an arts festival? Can you use that as an asset and become part of that? How are you going to attract locals throughout the year when you don't have your tourists? How are you going to fill your cafes if they're not very busy? Again, it's an asset. How can we think about that? Last couple of things. Sometimes it's worth thinking about what the offer is and how you can package them together for an audience. I was doing some work on an Arts Council project for the London Museum of Water and Steam. And they wanted to look at what the extra they could do for families aged 5 to 11. And we started to actually list what the offers were. The first lot are almost facility offers. I'm not going to go somewhere just because it's got free parking, but it helps. And actually, not only did they have kids' meals and stuff for kids and small portions for kids, and it was all worked for kids, they even had their own craft beer that was made by someone else. Yeah? They had a wide range of interpretation. They had steam engines that fired up. Wasn't clear exactly when it was happening. I started to talk to them, they showed me around, and then we got to this bit in the middle that said splash zone, but at the entrance I didn't know anything about this. I said, what is this? Oh, it's a water adventure playground in the middle of the museum, but wasn't linked up. And then they gave me a leaflet which said that at weekends and holidays they had engines which were in steam. And I had to ask them if that was good. I don't know what that is. What's in steam? And it turns out actually they had a little railway that you could go on for free that would take you around the site. Is there anyone here from the London Museum of Water and Steam? Okay. And they are changing this, and they are changing this slowly. So you can actually think about how you can package the offers together. And also, can you think about how you can package activities and events together? Can you do a season like theatre and opera does, where you link things together? Can people book it all in one go? Can they get a discount if they book it all in one go? If you go to one thing, can you give them incentives for the next thing that's linked? If it's the same audience and you've got the offers that are linked. So it's about how do you package that together. Okay, last bit. You don't have to do everything yourself, because you could work with others to come up with offers that will engage with your visitors, and you can play a big role or a small role or even just a hosting role, or you can put your name on it, your badge on it, and you're part of it. So you're part of the Christmas events, but it doesn't mean you're organising them all. Okay. Can you work with creative partners to do stuff for your venue? Can you draw on their imagination? Can you invite them to think about how they can use your assets in different ways? And the key thing is, can you use this to change, and can you use this to move outside your comfort zone? So partners can help you do that. Hopefully all of this can help you do that. I am going to stop there, and I'm going to do a number of things. Oh, you're doing that, aren't you? Yeah, okay. But well, the first thing is, we've got a few minutes for questions. Okay, and we have a roving microphone. Any questions at all? Don't all rush at once. Is there one there? Yep. No, you were just putting a kind of umbrella up. Anyone else? Anyone else? None from the floor? Yes, over there. Can you put the mic up quite close?
That was really interesting, and so many ideas there, but it made me think, what about resistance that you might encounter when you go into an organisation and you say, there's all these opportunities? What
resistance do organisations have to looking at all the opportunities? It's about the C word, it's about change, and it's about understanding, first of all, why they want to change, And secondly, it's a way of starting to explore what change looks like, or could look like. You don't have to do all of that. And some of that might not be appropriate to an organisation, and some of that might not work for certain audiences. Or they might choose not to do it. They don't want to do certain things. Fine. But it's about clarity and understanding that. So yes, there can be resistance, but it has to be embedded in a will to change. Or it could be just very small steps. We'll try something new, very easy, and we'll see how it goes. Any other questions? No, it's all gone quiet from the floor. It's getting late in the afternoon. Okay, right. Some things for you to do. There we go, I'm going to set you, it's not quite homework, but come up and see me if you want to ask any specific questions about your venue, or you want to know more about improving the visitor experience. Come up and see me also if you've got an idea or a half idea for something you want to share with the sector for the Museums and Heritage Show next year. Doesn't have to be fully worked out, but we could talk about that if you think you've got something which might be of interest. I'm around also tomorrow around the show if you want to stop and have a chat about this session or anything else to do with visitor experience. You can drop a line to the Museum and Heritage Show. This is a really easy email address, info@museumandheritage.com. That's not a tricky one, info@museumandheritage.com. And the last thing I'm going to ask is for everyone, can you clear the room for the next session, especially as the next one has been cancelled. It's a medical issue, I don't know what, but anyway, the next one's been cancelled, so the next session in here is 4 o'clock. Thank you for listening.